Leonardo DiCaprio has shocked Hollywood by taking legal action against a popular liberal TV show after they made outrageous comments about him during a live broadcast. The lawsuit has sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry, with insiders revealing that the actor is determined to hold them accountable. What exactly was said that pushed DiCaprio to this extreme? And could this be the beginning of a major backlash against Hollywood elites? Stay tuned as we uncover the full story and why this controversy could change everything. The world stopped. News anchors froze in shock. Headlines screamed the impossible. Leonardo DiCaprio sues popular liberal TV show Hollywood in crisis. Nobody saw it coming. Not from Leonardo DiCaprio, the man who spoke for the planet, the man who donated millions to save the earth, the man who never lost his cool. But that night, something changed. It happened live on air. Millions watched as the hosts of The Night Edge laughed, their words cutting deep. "He's just another rich playboy," one sneered. "Dating girls young enough to be his daughter," another added. The audience chuckled. But somewhere in a quiet, dimly lit room, Leo watched. His jaw tightened, his hands trembled. They weren't just mocking him, they were mocking his life, his name, his purpose. For years, he had stayed silent. He let the media say what they wanted. But tonight was different. Because this time, the words weren't just cruel, they were lies. And Leonardo DiCaprio was done being silent. Leo paced his grand Los Angeles home, the moonlight casting long shadows. His heart pounded. He could hear his mother's voice from years ago. "Your name is your honor, Leonardo. Never let them take it from you." She was right. He had worked too hard, fought too long to be reduced to gossip and mockery. But it wasn't just about him. It was about his father, George DiCaprio, the man who raised him on values, not money. It was about the love he never got to hold on to because his career always came first. It was about the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the dreams he had carried alone. Yet, here they were, laughing at his life like it was a joke. He turned on the TV. The clip was everywhere. DiCaprio refuses to grow up. He's a man-child. Maybe he should date someone his age for once. A lump formed in his throat. They didn't know. They didn't know the truth behind his choices. He picked up his phone. His lawyer's number flashed on the screen. "We sue." And just like that, a war had begun. Hollywood was on fire. Talk shows, podcasts, news segments. Everyone was talking about one thing. Why did Leonardo DiCaprio finally snap? Some called him weak, others called him brave. But deep inside the industry, behind the fancy red carpets and flashing cameras, celebrities whispered. Because they knew. They knew what it was like to be ridiculed, to have their truth stolen, to watch the world paint them as something they weren't. George Clooney sent him a message. "Proud of you, brother." Jennifer Lawrence called. "You just did what we all wish we could do." But not everyone was on his side. The network behind The Night Edge released a statement. Comedy is meant to push boundaries. If Mr. DiCaprio cannot take a joke, perhaps he is in the wrong business. The words burned. But Leo didn't care about the jokes. He cared about the truth. And he was ready to fight for it. Leo sat in silence, staring at the walls of his home. The lawsuit was public now. His name was being dissected on every news station, every social media platform. They thought he was doing this for pride. But they didn't know. They didn't know the nights he spent alone, drowning in memories of his father's words. "Your reputation is your legacy, son. It's all you leave behind." They didn't know about the promises he made to himself, that he would never let his success turn him into what Hollywood wanted him to be, a puppet, a character, a joke. The comments from The Night Edge played in his mind like a broken record. He just uses women like trophies. Maybe he should finally settle down, but I guess real love is too much for him. They laughed. The audience cheered. They had no idea how much those words hurt. Because they didn't know about Camilla. They didn't know about the love he had lost, the one woman he was willing to change for. and now they never would. His fists clenched. They had no right to rewrite his story. Her name was Camilla Morone. She was beautiful, but not just in the way Hollywood saw beauty. She was warm. She was real. She saw him. The man, not the celebrity. They spent 4 years together. She loved him for who he was, not for what the world thought of him. But Hollywood didn't let people like him have real love. The schedules, the flashing cameras, the whispers in magazines. She's too young for him. He'll leave her like the rest. And then, one night, he looked into her eyes and saw something that terrified him. She was tired. Tired of being reduced to a headline. Tired of fighting the world just to love him. So he let her go. Not because he didn't love her, but because he loved her too much to make her stay. Now these TV hosts laughed at his pain. They made it sound like a game, like he was some heartless man who never cared. They had no idea. Leo picked up his phone, scrolling past old pictures of her. His heart ached. This lawsuit wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. The media war had begun. Some called Leo brave. Others called him fragile. But behind the scenes, Hollywood was in chaos. Producers called their lawyers. Celebrities whispered in fear. Because if Leonardo DiCaprio could take on the media, if he could say, enough, then who else would follow? The hosts of The Night Edge released a public statement. We were just joking. If Mr. DiCaprio can't handle humor, maybe he shouldn't be in this business. Joking. They still didn't get it. George Clooney spoke out. There's a difference between humor and cruelty. What they did wasn't comedy, it was an attack. Jennifer Aniston tweeted, people forget celebrities have hearts too. The support poured in, but so did the hate. Leo is just mad because the truth hurts. Maybe if he stopped dating models, they wouldn't joke about it. The words stabbed at him, but he had already made up his mind. This wasn't just a fight for himself anymore. It was a fight for everyone Hollywood had ever chewed up and spat out. And he wasn't backing down. The lights of Los Angeles twinkled outside Leonardo's window, but inside his world was dark. He scrolled through social media, his eyes burning. People who had never met him, never known his heart, were laughing at his pain. He's just another rich man who can't take criticism. Maybe if he had a family, he'd understand real life. Those words cut deeper than anyone could imagine. They didn't know the nights he spent awake, wondering if he had made the right choices. They didn't know about the child he once dreamed of having, the son or daughter he had never met because Hollywood had consumed his life. People thought he loved his lifestyle, the yachts, the red carpets. But no one saw him when the cameras were gone, alone, surrounded by awards that couldn't keep him warm. A tear slipped down his cheek. He never let the world see this side of him. But now, they had given him no choice. He wasn't suing because of a joke. He was suing because the world had taken everything from him, his love, his peace, his truth, and it was time to take it back. In a small wooden box, hidden deep in his closet, lay a letter. It was old, the paper slightly crumpled, the ink faded. It was a letter to his father, a father who had once told him, Leo, you can have all the money in the world, but if you lose yourself, you've lost everything. He never sent it. He had written it years ago, when he felt his life slipping through his fingers. Dad, I don't know who I am anymore. They call me a legend, but I feel like a ghost. I wish you were here to tell me what to do. He had folded it, tucked it away, and pretended it didn't exist. But now, as the lawsuit grew bigger, as Hollywood turned against him, he pulled it out. And for the first time in years, he read his own pain. His chest ached. He missed his father more than ever. He wished he could hear his voice just once telling him that he was doing the right thing. But all he had was silence, and a battle he had no choice but to fight. His phone buzzed. He didn't recognize the number, but something told him to answer. Leo. The voice was deep, steady, someone he hadn't spoken to in years. It was Denzel Washington. Leo swallowed hard. Denzel was a man of wisdom, a man who had seen it all. "I've been watching, son, and I want you to know, you're not alone." Leo's hands shook. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear those words. They want to break you. They want to turn you into a punchline. But you are more than that. You are a man with a name, a legacy. And if you don't fight for it, no one else will. Tears blurred Leo's vision. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" Denzel paused. "I think you're doing what most of us were too afraid to do. You're standing up to the machine, and no matter what happens, that means something." Leo closed his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he felt something other than anger. He felt strength. And he knew, without a doubt, he wasn't backing down. Leo stared at the news headlines. DiCaprio's lawsuit, a rich man's tantrum. Hollywood golden boy can't take a joke. Is Leonardo DiCaprio afraid of the truth? It felt like knives twisting into his soul. The people he had entertained for decades were turning on him. The industry that once praised him now mocked him. But worst of all, his own friends were silent. People he had shared stages with, laughed with, fought for, none of them were speaking out. His phone rang. It was Brad Pitt. Leo answered, his voice weak. "Brad, you sure about this, man?" Brad's voice was careful. Leo exhaled. "I've never been more sure. They're gonna bury you." Leo looked out at the Los Angeles skyline. Let them try. For years he had given everything to Hollywood. Now Hollywood was ready to throw him away. But they didn't know one thing. Leonardo DiCaprio was not going down without a fight. And this lawsuit? It was only the beginning. A cold breeze swept through the hills of Los Angeles as Leo sat on his balcony, memories flooding his mind. They mocked him for never marrying, never settling down. But they didn't know the truth. He had been in love once. Deeply, painfully. Her name was Isabella. She wasn't famous. She wasn't a model. She wasn't part of Hollywood at all. She was a school teacher. A woman with kind eyes, soft laughter, and a heart that loved him for who he was, not for what he had. He was ready to leave everything behind for her. But fame stole her from him. Paparazzi followed her to work. Reporters knocked on her door. Her students were bullied because of her connection to him. And one night, through tears, she whispered, "Leo, I love you, but I can't do this. I can't live in your world." And just like that, she was gone. Now these TV hosts had mocked his pain. They laughed at the heartbreak that still haunted him. Leo clenched his fists. They would never understand what it meant to love and lose everything. But they would learn what it meant to face the consequences. An envelope arrived at his doorstep. No sender. No return address. Leo hesitated before opening it. His heart pounded as he unfolded the paper. It was handwritten. "Leo, I never wanted to reach out again. But when I saw what they said about you, I couldn't stay silent. They don't know you. They don't know the man who cried when my grandmother died. The man who held my hand through my worst days. The man who made me believe in love. I walked away from you, but not because you weren't good enough. Because the world wouldn't let us be happy. But I need you to know this. You are not what they say you are. You are good. You are kind. And you deserve the truth to be told. Always, Isabella." Tears filled Leo's eyes. For years, he had convinced himself he didn't deserve real love, that maybe the world was right about him. But now he knew he had to fight. Not just for himself, for the truth. For every person Hollywood had ever destroyed. And he wouldn't stop until justice was served. Leo sat alone in his darkened living room, staring at the flickering news on his TV screen. Every channel was talking about him. DiCaprio is overreacting. Hollywood elite can't take a joke. Maybe the truth just hurts too much. He let out a shaky breath, his fingers pressing against his temples. He was exhausted. This wasn't just about a lawsuit anymore. This was war. The phone rang. He hesitated before picking up. "Leo, it's me." It was Robert De Niro. "I've been in this business for over 50 years. Let me tell you something. Hollywood doesn't care about the truth. It cares about control." Leo's chest tightened. "You're shaking the system. That's why they're coming after you. But if you back down now, they'll bury you." Leo swallowed hard. He wasn't afraid of losing movies, losing fame. He was afraid of losing himself. De Niro's voice softened. "What they said about you? It was cruel. It wasn't just a joke. It was meant to break you." Leo closed his eyes. But he wasn't broken. Not yet. There was one moment Leo never talked about. Not to his friends, not to the press, not even to himself. It was the day his father died. He was only 22 when it happened. Young, lost, still trying to make a name for himself. His father, George DiCaprio, had been his guide, his hero, the man who taught him how to dream. And then, one morning, he was just gone. Leo had been on set, filming a scene for the Basketball Diaries. His phone rang. His mother's voice trembled. "Leo, he's gone." He remembered the way his knees buckled, the way the world blurred. But Hollywood didn't stop. The director clapped his hands. "Take 5, everyone. Leo, you good?" Good? His world had just shattered, and they wanted him to keep going. So he did. Because in Hollywood, there was no time to grieve. No time to be human. Now, all these years later, they laughed at him on live TV. They mocked his life, his choices. They had no idea the battles he had fought. But they were about to find out. Because Leo wasn't backing down. Not this time. Leo's lawyer, Lisa McMurray, sat across from him, her face unreadable. "The network is offering a settlement." Leo scoffed. "Of course they are." Lisa slid a paper across the table. $25 million. Leo felt sick. They thought they could put a price on his pain. "If you take it, they'll issue a public apology. The world will move on." Move on, like nothing happened. Like his name wasn't dragged through the mud. Like his soul wasn't ripped apart for entertainment. He shook his head. "No." Lisa hesitated. "Are you sure?" He was sure. This wasn't about money. It wasn't about revenge. It was about every person Hollywood had ever chewed up and spit out. The young actors used and discarded. The women reduced to headlines. The men turned into jokes. They had tried to destroy his name. But Leonardo DiCaprio was not for sale. He stood up, his voice steady. "We take this to court." And just like that, the world held its breath. Because now, there was no turning back. The courtroom was silent. Every seat was filled. Reporters, cameras, Hollywood elites, everyone wanted to see Leonardo DiCaprio versus the Night Edge. Leo sat with his lawyer, Lisa McMurray, his hands folded tightly. Across from him sat the show's hosts, looking smug, as if they had already won. The judge cleared his throat. "Mr. DiCaprio, you are suing for defamation, emotional distress, and damage to your reputation. Do you believe their comments caused you harm?" Leo took a deep breath. His voice was steady, but heavy with pain. "Yes, Your Honor. Their words did not just mock me, they rewrote my story. They made a joke out of my life, my losses, my truth." The defense attorney smirked. "Mr. DiCaprio, you're a public figure. Doesn't that mean you should be able to handle criticism?" Leo's jaw tightened. "Criticism is one thing. Lies are another. They painted me as a heartless man, a joke. But they never knew the nights I cried for the love I lost, the family I never had, the father I buried too young." The courtroom was silent. For the first time, the world saw his pain, and they weren't laughing anymore. The trial dragged on for days. People took sides. Some still mocked him, saying he was weak. Others, especially those who had suffered from Hollywood's cruelty, stood with him. Then something happened. A former writer from the Night Edge came forward. A woman named Jessica Lane. She was nervous as she took the stand, her hands shaking. "I worked for the show for 6 years," she said, "and I need to tell the truth." The courtroom leaned in. The comments they made about Mr. DiCaprio were not just jokes, they were planned. They wanted to destroy him. Gasps filled the room. The judge narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Jessica swallowed. "Hollywood doesn't like people who think for themselves. Leo has always been different. He never played by their rules. The producers told the host to target him, to humiliate him. They wanted to remind him that no one is bigger than the system." Leo's chest tightened. He had always known Hollywood was a machine, but now the world knew too, and everything was about to change. The world held its breath. The judge looked down at his papers, then back at Leo. After careful review, this court finds that the Night Edge engaged in a deliberate attack on Mr. DiCaprio's character, using false statements to defame him. We rule in favor of the plaintiff. The courtroom erupted. Leo won. But more than that, he had proven something. Hollywood was no longer untouchable. The hosts of the Night Edge looked pale, their careers in ruins. The network issued a desperate apology, but it was too late. Leo stood outside the courthouse, cameras flashing. Reporters yelled questions. "Do you feel like justice was served?" He looked at the sky, remembering his father's words. "Truth is the only thing that lasts." Then he turned to the cameras and spoke not just for himself, but for every soul Hollywood had ever destroyed. "This is for the ones they tried to silence, the ones they turned into jokes, the ones who never got to fight back. We are not their puppets anymore." Tears streamed down faces in the crowd, and for the first time, Hollywood felt fear, because the game had changed, and Leonardo DiCaprio had won. Did this story move you? Drop a comment with your thoughts. Like this video if you stand with Leo. And don't forget, subscribe for more powerful stories, because the truth must always be told.